G'day, I'm George Christensen, former Australian Member of Parliament, and this is Nation First. The United Nations is now telling democratic sovereign countries that they must fully legalise abortion on demand, bring in family law measures that will increase divorce rates, and drop border protection policies that stop illegal immigration and people smuggling. So the questions we ask today: who the hell are these people? What is their true agenda? And what happened to national sovereignty? Let's dive in. Before we get going, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and click the little bell to get more alerts when we have news to share with you on the Great Reset. Political thinkers since time immemorial have recognised that the most effective means of tyranny isn't through brute violence, but through establishing an aura of legitimacy. The pharaohs of Egypt ruled with absolute unquestioned authority, not by the force of arms, but by making people believe they were appointed by the gods to seemingly uphold order, peace and the law. Today we've gotten our own modern pharaohs in the form of globalist organisations such as the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, the World Health Organization, and of course the World Economic Forum. In the name of preserving global order, peace and law, these undemocratic organisations regularly interfere with the sovereignty of nations, undermining the people's will to promote their own agendas. Of these, the United Nations is the most inconspicuous in how it enforces and sustains a tyrannical order. More than any other globalist organisation, the UN, in the public eye at least, is seen as a fair and just organisation, upholding peace and promoting human rights. In reality, once you clear away the false facade, one quickly finds it to be amongst the most vile and corrupt institutions on the planet, with a history of sexually exploiting minors, a history of profiteering off people's suffering, a history of hindering attempts to stop genocide. The UN is nothing more than a tool of the elites to sustain and further their power over other nations, using it as a front to legitimise regressive policies. This can be seen by the actions of the United Nations Human Rights Committee in pressuring the Philippines recently to pass a number of laws relating to decriminalising abortion, legalising divorce, and supporting the LGBTIQ movement. They voice ending discrimination and supporting human rights as their excuse to interfere in the domestic politics of a sovereign country. However, let's look at the real reason why the UN is seeking to impose these sorts of policies. It's eliminating the nuclear family and isolating the individual. One only needs to look at data from countries where such laws are already passed to assess how damaging they are to the concept of family and kinship. In the United States, for instance, divorce rates are amongst the highest in the world, behind only Belarus and Russia, which are both suffering from war and economic uncertainty. Almost half of all marriages in the country will end in a divorce, greatly contributing to the epidemic of children being raised without a father. The same is the case in the United Kingdom, where 42% of marriages end up in divorce. With a new no-fault law introduced into the United Kingdom this year, that rate is expected to climb even further. In Australia, the situation is not too different. While statistics show that divorce rates are on the decline, they're deceptive because in absolute numbers, divorce rates have risen significantly, from 1.4 million in 2011 to 1.8 million today. Moreover, many younger couples now forego marriage and instead just cohabit. The crisis of broken families can then be seen better through data on single parentage. This year in Australia, single parent families crossed the 1 million mark for the first time in our history, representing 16% of all families recorded on the census. Broken single parent families are amongst the easiest to exploit. This isn't against them, this is reality. The high cost of living forces single parents to rely on the state to feed their children. It creates dependency and hence eliminates them as a source of dissent against state tyranny. You don't bite the hand that feeds you. Furthermore, numerous studies show how integral the presence of a mother and a father is for a child's healthy development. Those growing up without a father are more likely to adopt antisocial behaviours, as well as partake in criminal activities, struggle with low self-esteem, suffer from mental disorders, and see future relationships negatively affected. Similarly, those growing up without a mother tend to be emotionally stunted. They have trouble maintaining healthy relationships, they're prone to suicidal tendencies and feel the loss of hope in life. That's not all of them, but some of them. And the powers that be want to raise future generations that are too mentally crippled to offer any real resistance. It's under this context that the adoption of children by same-sex couples also remains a source of concern. And in regards to abortion, it doesn't take much to guess why the UN promotes it, given that a lot of the globalist elites have been very vocal about human depopulation. In the United States, after the case of Roe v. Wade legalised abortion in 1973, rates shot up exponentially before a series of pushbacks reduced the numbers back again. In the United Kingdom, where abortion laws received absolutely no pushback, each new year numbers reach a new record, putting the country's future in crisis. Meanwhile, here in Australia, the number of abortions has remained steady, but it should be contextualised with the fact that the country is suffering from a collapsing fertility rate. Thus, the actual percentage of pregnant women having an abortion is higher than ever. Now, beyond depopulation, the prevalence of abortion has also contributed to the ongoing global mental health crisis. It impacts both the potential mother and father, but more so it impacts women. Those who've had an abortion have been reported to suffer from depression, anxiety, decreased self-esteem, and even symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. So what social contract exists between ordinary people and globalist organisations like the UN for them to interfere with our domestic politics? Yet the indoctrination is so widespread that for a government to resist their meddling in the affairs of sovereign democratic nations is perceived as somehow wrong. Last year, the UN Human Rights Committee tried to pressure Australia to do away with its strong border protection policies, citing human rights concerns, which is ironic considering some of the biggest human rights abusers sit on that council. This includes such notables as Sudan, which is currently committing genocide and a whole host of excessive human rights abuses, Venezuela, currently being ruled by a harsh, totalitarian communist government, and communist China, the Orwellian fascist dystopia made manifest in real life. Under the guise of human rights and peace, the UN justifies the promotion of a globalist agenda. It's not out of concern for migrants that the UN raises issues with Australia's border policies or Italy's migration laws, but rather because they defied the elite's agenda for open borders. It's not out of concern for women that the UN denounces the US Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, but rather because it defies the elite's push for depopulation. And it's not out of concern for unhappy married folk that the UN calls for an end to the no divorce rule in the Philippines, but rather because it defies the elite's bent against the traditional family unit. Deception lies at the heart of high politics, making those who resist unsure of one's real intention. We shouldn't be pacified by rhetoric or propaganda that's pushed upon us. Rather than well-curated words, it's got to be consequences that we assess in determining true intentions. And the true intentions of the globalist elite are to undermine our national sovereignty and our personal freedoms. Don't let them. Fight back by spreading the truth. Share this video, like this video, subscribe to this channel, and click the bell to get more alerts when we have news to share with you on the Great Reset. God bless you, your family and nation. I'm George Christensen, and this has been Nation First.